And here we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. That's right, Coffee Talk, where we will be talking about what is going on in the world today and taking a look at some snippets from the news, read them through, and be as sarcastic as hell at how ridiculous it is because they think we're all morons. And fair enough, most people are not that smart. If you hear a bell ringing in the background, that's Dusty playing with a toy there. She likes that thing a lot, that wand. Drags it all over the house. So, of course, you can find me on X, aka Twitter, at Coffee Talk Chat, as well as at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as at Prepper University on YouTube, where this is broadcast live at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. And I do, of course, try to read through as many of the comments as is reasonable, so the people that are listening and not able to see what's going on can keep up with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people who have chimed in thus far in the live portion. I see Helter is here. Dragon is here. Donna Beaver, who reminds people to thumbs up and share and all that good stuff. Absolutely, please do. Give it a thumbs up if you don't mind. Brian is here. Semper Fi. Mr. Landfill is here. Phill Phil. Gary Smith is here. Semper Fi again. He says, listening while I do inventory on food storage. As long as it's not an inventory on food shortage, you'll be all right. As we get ready to dive into this, I can't play with you right now, Dusty. She drugged that thing in here for me to mess around with. I see Boogers is here. One last look at Dusty there and her little bell toy on the floor that she drug all over the house and brought in so that I could play with her, and I can't do it right now. Sorry, Dusty, you got to wait. That's all right, sweetheart. Now, this is interesting, and this comes from actually AFA Action Alert. Okay, AFA Action Alert is who posted this. And Mr. Landfill says, I heard we should be stocking food. Always keep a stocked pantry. Do the best you can with that. You don't have to buy 30-year freeze-dried foods and all that. If you can do that, that's fine. Most people can't afford it. I always recommend the staples, rice, pasta, beans, things like that, can store for decades if you store them properly. And just keep it in rotation. If it's something that you eat regularly, keep it in rotation. You should always have, at a bare minimum, 3 months of food stashed away, just as a start. Best case scenario, 2 years. But some people don't have the space for that, or they don't have the finances for it. So 3 months is a good place to start. And I see Preparedness Veteran is here, as well as D-Lo from North Carolina, even though I think you're in California, aren't you? And Mr. Landfill says he likes to think he's well stocked. Only a total disaster will tell. Yeah, you never know, but you can only do the best you can do. As we get ready to open this up. And again, this is AFA Action Alert. Making a point about NBC. It says NBC purposefully censors Jesus's, Yeshua, aka Jesus, mentioned from social media post. You see the football player is being interviewed. It says, after leading his team to victory over the Cleveland Browns last Saturday, Houston, Texas quarterback C.J. Stroud was interviewed by NBC's Catherine Tappan. Without hesitation, Stroud made sure everyone knew the key behind his talent. Quote, first and foremost, I just want to give all glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, he said. He then went on to talk about his team and the team's fans. Okay. I mean, it's been amazing being in the city for as short as I've been, but the love that I've got, he's continued. I've really just been doing it for Houston, people back home. I'm blessed enough to be in the position I am. blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. But later on, according to Fox News, when the network posted the video on its Saturday Night Football on NBC program's X account, it removed all references to Stroud's faith. You can see the X post comparing the two NBC interviews here, and apparently there is available links for that. NBC edited out Houston quarterback C.J. Stroud's praise of Jesus Christ in their post-game interview posted to X. Why did NBC remove Stroud saying, first and foremost, I just wanted to give all glory and praise to my Lord Jesus Christ? Citizen Free Press has written on X. And that's something that we're seeing more and more of in recent years, is whenever someone does that, whenever someone professes anything related to their faith, they get whitewashed. They get censored. I'm not offended that he said that. I don't care. It's, that's how he feels about it. And he wanted to express that. He should be allowed to do that. If we had free speech, which apparently we don't. See, Bingo is here. All people. Stuart is here. And there we go. As more people are joining us in the live portion. But what purpose does it serve for NBC to censor that? Who are they afraid they're going to offend? Who are they afraid that they're going to offend? If he said he wanted to praise Allah, would they have censored it? What do you think? Would they have censored that if he said he wanted to praise Allah? Helter says players have thanked God before with no problems, but there is also a systemic effort to remove God and morality from all angles. Yeah. Because if you remove that, you end up with all atheists. And follow this line of thought. And this is the big problem with straight atheism also. And I'm sure that there are some decent atheists out there, but everyone that I've ever run into has been kind of a hypocrite. They've been mean and cruel, quite frankly. Follow the logic. If there's no God, there's no devil. If they don't exist, there's no heaven and no hell. If that doesn't exist, there's no judgment. And if there's no judgment, there's no spiritual justice. And if there's no spiritual justice, do as thou wilt, provided you don't get caught, because there will be no consequences. You want to kill somebody, you want to steal from somebody, you want to burn someone's house down, just don't get caught. But don't worry about consequences, because there are none from a spiritual perspective. What, Dusty? I hear you whining back there. Dragon says, I wonder why that would be, but critical thinking is hard for a lot of people. Yeah. And Gary Smith says, can't have someone believing in something the networks don't support now, can we? Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. But that's the train of thought. And so then you end up with a self-centered, hedonistic society of narcissists who are double-minded and, as they used to say in Africa, speak out of both sides of their mouth. And that's the unfortunate reality of it. As we shift gears here, we'll talk about Rwanda, actually, of all things. Semper Fi, excuse me. Semper Fi says Mrs. Semper Fi saw that article and got pissed off. Yeah, I don't blame her. Let him believe whatever he wanted. I bet you if I went to the Oscars and thanked Satan, they wouldn't have blocked it. And Rave Boy says critical thinking is not taught in schools and is also discouraged. You know, public school is a disaster. It was bad when I was in public school in the 70s and 80s. It was bad when I had to deal with public school when I was working for juvenile justice. And I'm sure it's even worse now and continuing to get worse. This article is from El Pais. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. UK lawmakers pass a bill to send migrants to Rwanda. It doesn't mean it's going to get all the way through, because doesn't it have to go through another parliamentary session to get approved? Anyways, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak quelled a Conservative Party rebellion and got his stalled plan to send some asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, on a one-way trip to Rwanda through the House of Commons on Wednesday. It would be a lot cheaper than spending tax money to take care of them. Lawmakers voted 320 to 276 to back a bill intended to overcome a UK Supreme Court block on the Rwandan plan. But the contentious immigration policy on which Sunak has staked his authority still faces political and legal hurdles, and Sunak remains at the helm of a divided and demoralized party that is lagging in the polls. The vote came a day after some 60 members of Sunak's governing Conservatives rebelled in an effort to make the legislation tougher. The dissent cost Sunak two-party deputy chairman who quit in order to vote against the government. But when it came to a vote on the bill as a whole, the rebellion melted away. A larger rebellion Wednesday would have doomed the safety of Rwanda bill. How's it the safety of a Rwanda bill and you're sending people back there? And imperiled Sunak's 15-month-old government. It's this bill or no bill or no chance, Conservative lawmaker Bob Seeley told colleagues before the vote. The bill now goes to the unelected House of Lords. Yeah, I figured there would be another step. Parliament's upper chamber, where it faces more opposition. So basically, here we go. Jump down one more paragraph here. It says he argues that deporting unauthorized asylum seekers will deter people from making risky journeys across the English Channel and breaking the business model of people smuggling gangs. We have a plan. It's working, Sunak said Wednesday in the House of Commons. You shouldn't be taking them all in anyways. It's destroying the United Kingdom, just like all of the immigration is destroying the United States. It's killing us. It's absolutely killing us. And Mr. Landfill says class of 85 here. Yeah, school wasn't great then. It sucked then. And Urban Angst made it. Glad you could get here today talking about the UK and lawmakers passing a bill to start deporting Rwandan illegal immigrants. I'm going to call it what it is. Illegal immigrants. They are not asylum seekers. I know Rwanda isn't that great, but you can't just keep piling into westernized countries and bringing all your mess with you, especially a shame and honor / revenge oriented society. And Preparedness says the Rwanda bill was a token effort to appease the range of the people regarding the illegals. Yeah, because it's passed, but it still has to go to the House of Lords. So we'll see where that ends up. It's a good first step if they're willing to take a second one. Excuse me, because once again, just like I'm always suggesting about the United States, it's cheaper to deport them. It's cheaper to repatriate them, as they like to say, the politically correct terminology being repatriating, than it is to pay for them. We're being hemorrhaged. We're bleeding dry in tax funds to feed and clothe and provide medical services and house and send to school these children of these so-called immigrants. It's costing us a fortune. We can't afford it. We can't keep it up. And it's only going to get worse. Deporting them, honestly, is the only ultimate option. It's the only ultimate option unless you just want to bankrupt the country. And All People says the Rwanda plan was a lie. It's been in place for years and have not sent anyone there. Sunak is a fraud. He's bringing in more migrants and won't stop the small boats. And preparedness veteran says House of Lords is a powerless, idiotic waste of time. Well, the king doesn't have that kind of power anymore. And Semper says, glad to see Texas stand up and arrest those that come across. Hopefully they're processed and returned to Mexico. Well, in Texas, they're moving completely against the federal government's mandates. And they're calling the federal government's bluff. They're calling the bluff of the executive branch. Yeah, we dare you to do something, basically. They're tired of it. And I don't blame them. Because they're at the front line of this. And they're expected to just suck it up because the Border Patrol has been told not to do their job ever since Joe Biden came into office. The executive branch ordered them to stop rejecting anyone, stop turning people around, stop putting them back on buses, let everybody in, don't stop them. And they're obeying. They chose to obey that order. Preparedness veteran says the film Children of Men is pretty interesting. I've seen that film. And Gary Smith says bleeding the country dry is the real reason behind illegal immigration in the first place. They're killing us. And they know they're causing us damage. Anyway, your next scare, besides the UFOs, because we've talked about that a few times, first news story of the year was UFOs over Ukraine and Poland. So they want you scared of aliens again, as well as the possibility of another plandemic. Did I say plandemic? I can't help it. Here you go, the Daily Express. WHO admits we're not prepared for the next plandemic, as disease X could kill 50 million people. Disease X, everybody. Quake in your boots. Hide under your beds. Gary Edwards is here. Glad you could make it. Glad you could make it. The WHO admits they're not prepared. That's because the WHO has a bunch of frauds and a bunch of people that have nothing to do with medicine on their panels. Remember, we read that article a week ago that their trans authority specialists consists mostly of activists with no medical experience. So here we go. Here's the article. The world is still not prepared for the next plandemic, the Director General of the World Health Organization warned. Experts believe the next outbreak could be even worse than the C virus. I can't help calling it the C virus. I've gotten in a lot of trouble on ScrewTube for using the actual terminology. You know what virus I'm referring to, though. I'm sure most of you are aware. So Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus made the stark warning while appearing at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. He and other experts spoke on a panel titled Preparing for Disease X. Disease X. That sounds like a 50s science fiction film. Disease X. Queer, fear, quake is a placeholder name for an unknown virus that could infect humans in the future that experts believe could kill as many as 50 million people. Basically, you had a round table of so-called experts. It makes me think of the movie Ali G, and he calls his friends to come into where the impound yard where all the pornography is being held, and they're wearing lab coats, and they come to the door and they said, "Hello, we is experts." Is this, you don't hire somebody and just call them an expert, and they believe it could kill as many as 50 million people based on what? Based on what? The false narrative we were spun about the C virus? Where if somebody got in a car wreck and was decapitated and you tested them for the C virus and it was positive, that's what went on the death certificate, that kind of those kind of numbers and statistics. Shyam Baishin, head of the Center for Health and Healthcare at the WEF, opened the event by saying, "How do we prepare for the next emergency?" You weren't prepared for the last one. How do we prepare our health system overall, for the next pandemic? We all know very well there will be viruses, there will be pathogens, there will be outbreaks. The idea is, how do we prepare to contain those? How do we prevent outbreaks from becoming full-blown pandemics? Oh my God. Gary Smith says worse than the C virus because they've had more time to get it ready. There it is. Gary Smith. Gary Edwards is the other Gary. Preparedness says, is the disease X scenario. In the disease X scenario, no one lives, but I'm sure the Chinese research lab currently working on a mutated C strain are hell-bent on making a disease X scenario. And all people wants to remind us that migration is part of the Coward Piven scheme, and to Google that. Helter says, classic WHO predictive programming to make the public familiar with a new disease so they can accept it when it comes and do as they are told, even if they are asked to do things that don't make sense. It worked last time. Wear a mask. Hell, wear two. Put on rubber gloves. Stand 6 feet apart. Which, by the way, Fauci, in an interview last week, I think it was last week or the week before, admitted that stand 6 feet apart thing, they just kind of made it up. They don't know if it worked or not. They just wanted to make some guidelines. So they said stand 6 feet apart, but it probably didn't work and they just made it up. Is anyone outraged yet? The outrageous part is the fact that if people were told to do it again, they will. They'll wear 2 masks. They'll put on rubber gloves. They'll have a bottle of hand sanitizer hanging off of a belt loop. They'll stand 6 feet apart. They'll yell at anybody who doesn't comply, even if they don't believe it works. Oh, man. Semper Fi says, interesting how the UK is developing a vaccine at a bioweapons lab, how there's a vaccine for something they say doesn't exist yet. I call BS. They've already got it ready to release on the globe. Yeah, and then they could poison you with heavy metals. Preparedness says, God help us if a real virus comes along. The Muppets in charge couldn't even manage the Cornetto virus. And Gary Edwards says, Werner von Braun told his assistant that the successive crisis of fear would be manufactured by the elites: communism, terrorism, climate change, pandemic, and eventually culminating in an alien invasion. He's about right. And one more here. The Dragon says the WHO have shown exactly what they are to the people who are actually paying attention over the last couple of years. Yeah, an overpaid media outlet is what they are, who wants to put a scare into everybody, to control them, to manipulate them, get people afraid enough that they'll do anything, believe anything. As we trip around here, yeah, we're back to this guy again. You remember him. Fox News article. And yeah, all people, you're going to love this one. You're going to love this one. One more comment. Gary Smith says an airborne virus can travel much more than 6 feet just on the air currents. Yeah, and my argument has always been, if you're standing in line and you're 6 feet apart, when the line moves up, you're standing right where the sick person was. So what good is that doing you? There's your boy. You remember him, Mr. Fire Alarm himself. Mr. Fire Alarm himself. And he has a plan. Are you ready for this? Squad lawmaker explains creative way to pay $14 trillion in reparations. He says it's a moral and a legal obligation. Okay. New York lawmaker wants the federal government to push a $14 trillion reparations measure. Oh, wow. The measure is touted by squad member Representative Jamal Pull That Alarm Bowman, who wants the federal government to be held accountable for slavery and the aftermath of it, according to the Journal News. Bowman cited the federal government's response to the C virus pandemic and the space race endeavor as examples that would make the measure feasible. Yeah, let's draw some lines. I could just see him sitting in his office with the big pegboard with all the newspaper clippings and the pins and the yarn stringing everything together. Quote, when the C virus was destroying us, we invested in the American people in a way that kept the economy afloat, said Bowman. Yeah, it worked out really well. The economy has been crushed. The government can invest in the same way for reparations without raising taxes on anyone. Yeah, okay. Where did the money come from? Bowman said. We spent it into existence. Yeah, they asked him where the money spent it into existence, huh? Where'd the money come from? It came from taxes, jackass. Bowman is among the 9 sponsors of H.R. 414, which seeks to establish that the U.S. has a moral and legal obligation to provide reparations for the enslavement of Africans and its lasting harm on the lives of millions of black people in the United States. Like Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey and and all those poor, suffering black folk. The measure introduced in 2023 would prompt the federal government to spend $14 trillion on a reparations program that would support the descendants of enslaved black people and people of African descent. Blacks make up 12% of the U.S. population, according to a census figures. Finally, someone admits it, that it's less than 13% of the population. Reportedly, the bill comes 3 decades after another bill that sought to assemble a federal commission to study reparations. So, more money wasted on committees. The measure to establish a federal commission on the impact of reparations was reintroduced this year, and Bowman is a sponsor of it. I'm sure he is. The measure could address concerns over perceived racial disparities in housing, mass incarceration, and educational outcomes. As the bill states, eliminate the racial wealth gap that currently exists between black and white Americans. Bowman added that the incarcerated should also be able to vote. Oh, God. And I definitely think that when they come out, they should automatically be enfranchised. To put the price tag in perspective, the federal government spent about $7 trillion in 2020, about 28% of the national's $25 trillion economy. Bowman believes the $14 trillion could be distributed over decades. Basically, he wants it on a payment plan. He thinks every black person in the country should get $333,000 and it should be broken up into monthly checks. And I'm just paraphrasing from out of the rest of the article so I don't have to read like the next 9 paragraphs. The bill cites scholars. I want to know what scholars came up with this, by the way. The estimates that the U.S. benefited from over 222 trillion hours of forced labor between the years of 1619 and 1865, with a value of $97 trillion in modern currency. Where do you get those numbers from? Do you know exactly how many slaves there were and where they came from and what they did and how much it cost to food, clothes, house, purchase them, anything like that? Where do you get these numbers from? That it's $97 trillion in free labor. What scholars came up with that? It says there were 246 years of free labor that produced trillions or hundreds of trillions of dollars for the U.S. economy. The economy wouldn't exist the way it does today if slavery hadn't built it. I don't necessarily agree with that. What we have here is a guy who got jammed up because he broke a federal law by pulling a fire alarm that would have put you or me in prison for 5 years. He got a fine and a slap on the wrist. Okay? And this is him pandering to black voters because that's absolutely ridiculous. There's no way that anybody could afford that. No damn way that anybody could afford that. And I'm going to catch up a couple of comments here really quickly. Merv says the bureaucratic coup d'etat of America continues. Call it our freedom depends on us exposing the treacherous activities of government. Well, you can try. And Henry says maybe the African slave trade should pony up. They're the ones that sold their people into slavery. That's true, too. And Samanda is here. Glad you could make it today. Gary Edwards says nobody will sympathize with ancestral slavery or thug culture after they've been paid reparations. It'll be the worst thing to ever happen to the Black community. Selling a legacy is immoral. Also, if you're getting a regular stipend, a regular check, it just encourages you to do less. And then you'll be more of a burden on society. And that'll create even more division, because then I'll be sitting here, just using myself as an example as a Caucasian person. Why am I paying for this guy? He does nothing all day, and he's angry about it too. And that would be a justified argument. Why am I paying for you? What have you contributed? Why do you get a check? Why have I got to pay for it out of my taxes? It's crazy. And all people have some history on Bowman. And I will remind you, and this is the big surprise, and many of you know this because I've talked about it before when I talk about my wife. My wife is an actual slave descendant. She is a slave descendant whose family received reparations generations ago through a program called Heirs Land, Heirs, Heirs Land. And you won't find anything about it on Google. You won't. You have to go to the Department of Agriculture to look it up, because family groups generations ago had plantations divided up and were given hundreds and hundreds of acres all across the South as a reparation. And her family lives on there today. The families own and operate it, and they have like an elder system in place where if you want a vacant plot of land, you go to the elder, make sure no one has claimed it, and you just put your name on it, and then you can go build a house. And the federal government can't touch it, and the state government can't touch it. They can't regulate it at all. It's like an Indian reservation almost. And I never even heard of it until I met her, and we went down there, and the people there explained it to me. Like, oh yeah, we've been living here forever. Our parents, grandparents, great grandparents, all the way back, have been living on here, out here, and enjoying the land. And they hate the concept of reparations because they know it's already been done. This whole system is embarrassing. Catch up a couple more comments. Dragon says there will be no cash payments at best. The government will take this money for some sort of urban redevelopment program, another spending program they will call reparations. Helter says the billions of reparation dollars would have to come from massively raising taxes. Indeed. And Pennsylvania Prepper is here. Good afternoon. Glad you could make it today. Urban Angst says, who are the descendants of the actual Africans who sold their own people to foreign Westerners? God knows. And Samantha wants to know, where have I been? I've been here. ScrewTube just doesn't send out notifications anymore. Like I pointed out, if you're watching on Prepper University, 66,000 subscribers. I put a video out. I'm lucky if it gets 500 views in 2 or 3 weeks. They're not sending notifications out to anyone. Pennsylvania says, is the property taxable? It is taxed, but at the level of when it was originally initiated, and it cannot be changed. I was talking to people there that they were living on like a 2-3 acre spread, paying less than $100 a year in property taxes. It can't be changed, and the property cannot be sold. So like Texaco can't come in and say, hey, we want to buy this from you. You can't sell it outside of the family. All you can do is will it to another family member, or turn it back into the community so that they can make it available for someone else if they want that plot. But yeah, my wife right now could go, and she's from South Carolina, could go down there, drive around, spot of an open area. I think the minimum you can take is a half an acre, if I remember correctly, and go to whoever's in charge of that family grouping and say, hey, on such and such a street right there's a plot. Can I grab that? And he'll pencil her in, and it's hers, and that's it. And she can build a house on it. She can put a double wide on it. She can grow weed on it, whatever the hell she wants to do. She can put a corner store on it. She just can't franchise it out because no one else but someone in the family can own it. You know, it's really funny. that if someone had a loan on a house and they tried to foreclose on that property, the bank can't take it. The bank can't take the property because it's illegal for anyone but a family member to for anybody from outside of the family group to possess it. And what Pennsylvania Prepper says, I don't get notifications. You don't, question mark, or you do or you don't. And he says our property taxes are going to be $25,000, which is stopping us from building. I hate taxes. Yeah, you must be in Illinois. When we lived in Illinois, the taxes were insane. They were absolutely insane. It was embarrassing. And Pennsylvania said I'd take the max. Yeah. Well, she grew up down there, so she's not worried about it right now. But it's always available because we're in Georgia right now. It's always available for her from her family unit if she wants to go down there and claim a spot. You know, it's always up in the air. We talk about it from time to time. Preparedness has never had any problems with YouTube, really, but I don't really contribute to the big collective anymore. I always say if you want to find an expert, make a YouTube video. But anyways, that, you know, just putting that in a nutshell. And like I said, it's heirs land or heirs property. And if you looked it up, you're not going to find much, but you can find a lot of information on it if you go to the Department of Agriculture's website. If you go to the Department of Agriculture's website, and there's some snippet there from All People, I'll throw it up there for you to take a look at as we flip around here. And we're going to shift from reparations to, is this going to open? It's acting funny. Okay. We're going to shift from reparations to pandering. We're going to pander. This kind of stuff drives me nuts. My wife sent me this one. And this is from, who made this? Whose article is this? 2190 is the article. Black women dominate the 75th Primetime Emmy Awards. Really? After a 4-month delay due to the dual strikes in 2023, the 75th Primetime Emmy Awards premiered on MLK Day. No, you don't say. So they premiered it. Look at, she looks awful in that makeup. So they premiered it on Martin Luther King Day and gave the majority of the Primetime Emmy Awards to Black people. And that's not virtue signaling? Okay. After a 4-month delay, I read that, due to the dual strikes in 2023, the 75th Primetime Emmy Awards premiered on MLK Day. The ceremony saw groundbreaking wins for artists of color. Hosted by actor and game show host Anthony Anderson, this year's show tied the record established in the 1991 ceremony. Performers of color received 5 of the 12 acting awards. While it was a big celebration for all women of color, continued to break records in their respective categories. Abbott Elementary creator and star Quinta Brunson and the Bear star Ayo Edebiri became the first Black women pair to win Best Actress and Supporting Actress for a comedy series, respectively, in the same year. Beef actress Ali Wong also made history as the first Asian woman to win an Emmy for a lead role. I don't know any of these people, and I've never heard of any of these shows. I don't watch modern TV, though, to be fair. But this is pandering at its best. This is virtue signaling. We're going to do it on MLK Day. You could have done it any other time. Excuse me. You could have done it any time. It's the Emmy Awards. It's not like anybody's watching anymore. All of these award shows are fake now. You don't earn an award. Not for anything that you actually did. Not for acting. I'm willing to bet if I watch any of these shows, the acting's not good and the comedy's not funny. Just like most modern television. This is pure virtue signaling. And they wonder why people don't want to watch this stuff anymore. The Oscars, the Emmys, the music awards. It's a virtue signaling contest, and it's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Makes me sick. Oh man. So I catch up a few more comments here. Brian says, remember YouTube before Google bought it out? Yeah. Yeah. You didn't have all of this going on, Brian. I remember. And Carrick is here. Glad you could make it. Gary Edwards says reparations render resentment against the black community. Yeah, it can. I can see that. Absolutely. Pennsylvania says he's in Pennsylvania, obviously. Taxes are $50 per 1,000 spent on new construction. With the costs now, we're spending $500,000, where under Trump it was $200 for new construction. God. And Samantha says, are they women or those who ID as women? In the picture there, I think those are actual females. And Semper Fi says Emmy Awards mean nothing. Look at ESPN. They made up names of people that won. They had to give them all back. And Urban says, why not celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day by simply celebrating Martin Luther King Jr.? What am I missing? No, we have to pretend that it's a bigger deal than it is. And we have to have television specials, and we have to have parades and all this other stuff so we can act like we care. Or rather, I should say, so the government and media can act like they care. And Pennsylvania says 19 watching, only 7 thumbs up. What channel are you on? Are you on Coffee Talk or Penny University? Because it's on both, and I see a combined number. But yeah, thumbs up would be certainly appreciated. Henry says, like all these Hollywood award shows, their ratings have hit rock bottom. No one cares. And Gary Edwards says, intersectional participation awards are valueless. I remember. I agree. It's kind of like the Oscars. The Oscars have been trailing off for 20 years. Nobody was watching the Oscars until Will Smith slapped oh god, what the hell is his name? Chris Rock. And I swear that's staged. You cannot convince me that that was not staged. 500 views of the audience's reaction, 1 camera angle of the slap with 24 cameras on stage. You know, they all record at the same time, and the director's booth just shifts what camera's being used. Plus, there's a 2-minute delay from the Oscars. There's a 2-minute delay on any live broadcast. I think it's 2 minutes, correct? If I'm wrong, tell me. There's a 2-minute delay in case something stupid happens and they need to cut to commercial. But they let it air. That whole thing was staged. It was bullshit. But people started watching the Oscars again, and that's why they did it. Remember, actors. Helter said, just like political campaigns, nominations and winning entertainment awards has nothing to do with the values of the work. Awards are political and financial, nothing more. You know, John Belushi said it. John Belushi, I can't remember what award it was, but you might be able to find it. It's a film clip of it, and it circulates on YouTube from time to time. And it's in the 70s, and they're giving him an award somewhere. 70s or early 80s. They're giving him an award, and he says, I really appreciate this because unlike the Oscars and the other awards that you have to buy now, this one you actually earn. Something to be said for that. Catching up here. Well, I'm way behind in comments. Dragon says nominations are based on who threw the best screen party. That could be. And Nature Nerd says, why don't any Democrats on their media know the southern states already gave slave descendants land reparations? I'm sure they know, but they can't pander to a potential voting group if they admit it. If they even know. Like I said, if you looked it up, you'd have to go to the Department of Agriculture's website to find any information on it, any solid information. But I'm sure a lot of them know. But if they sat there, if I was running for Senate against Raphael Warnock, because he's the senator here, and I said, dude, actual slave descendants already got a piece. They got it generations ago and explained everything that I just explained. Do you think anybody in the audience is going to believe me? And Warnock will attack me. Oh, you're just a white supremacist. He'll tear me apart. I'm married to a black woman. And through her family is how I found out about this, because they live there. And Pennsylvania wants to know how come he can't see all the comments. There's something, I forget how it works. Maybe someone can tell you in the comment section, but there's a way you can tweak it that you can see comments from both channels, but I can see all of them. I can see all of them. And Leopold says that I missed something. If you're in this late, you missed plenty. You missed plenty. And I see Burnaby Sanchez is here. He says it's time for the woke to go broke. Yeah, please, please. And Semper Fi made a $5 donation to the channel. He says it's for the kitties. Well, I really appreciate it, Semper Fi. Thank you very much. As many of you are aware, we have a cat shelter that we run. We have a lot of adopted and stray animals that we take care of, and we work with the local shelter and a veterinarian to try to get some of them rehomed. So every little bit helps. Thank you, Semper Fi. Very much appreciated. And Merv says, as long as they keep us fighting amongst ourselves, they have the power and the control over us. And did Jussie Smollett win another award? I have no idea. I have no idea. But yeah, it is another way to keep us divided also. It's another way to keep us absolutely divided. And it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing. Burnaby says, I'm all in for Texas to leave the union. I'm waiting for Biden to attack us with F-15s. Yeah, because you remember what happened the last time that a state tried to exercise its right to secede from the union, correct? It was called the Civil War. It didn't work out too well, even though legally, according to the federal government, you should be able to secede. They didn't allow it, did they? Preparedness says Argentinian president gave a good speech to the WEF recently. He basically outlines how pandering and left-wing policies are bringing about the downfall of societies. And All People wants to remind people for the billionth time, everyone, it is not the continental slave descendants that are demanding reparations. Stop falsely blaming them. They protest reparations. Yeah, if you bring up reparations to my wife or her family, they're like, that doesn't make any damn sense. My tax money ain't going to that. But a lot of the people, which is why every time they have committees to discuss this, like they did in Chicago and New York and all this other places, with we're going to form a committee to talk about reparations. And California, it's very difficult to pin it down because there are very few Black people in the United States that are actually true descendants. Very few. So moving around here, Fox News article. House committee warns Department of Justice new independent contractor rule threatens small businesses. They overturned a Trump-era law and made it extremely complicated, and now it's causing problems for contractors. So here we go. The House Committee on Small Business is urging the Department of Labor to reconsider the agency's new rules for determining whether a worker is an independent contractor, saying the regulations will disproportionately impact smaller entities. In a letter shared exclusively with Fox Business and sent to Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su on Tuesday, Committee Chair Roger Williams expressed concern over the changes, saying it seems that the DOL failed to properly consider small entities in this rule. He said businesses in the construction, trucking, and healthcare industries will be affected the most. The new rule, titled, get ready because this is a mouthful, Employee or Independent Contractor Classification under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Can we get an acronym for that, please? That's ridiculous. Was finalized last week. It repeals a Trump-era contractor test implemented in 2021 and returns to a 6-factor economic realities test, which makes it much more difficult for businesses to clarify workers as independent contractors. The Labor Department argues the new rules preserve workers' rights and offers consistency across all entities covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act. But according to lawmakers that are pushing against this, it actually complicates it and puts these people at a disadvantage. Government overreach, anyone? Are you surprised they're doing something to cause more complications? More complications. You know what this makes me think of? And a lot of people probably haven't seen this. If you're on the East Coast, you might have heard about it. The fishing on the East Coast. If you have a fishing vessel, you're required to have an observer on your boat now. And you have to pay this observer like $700 a day. Some bureaucrat from the department that oversees fishing. You have to pay some bureaucrat who has nothing to do with the fishing industry $700, more than, I think it's like $712 a day to sit on your boat and watch you fish. Doesn't know shit about what you're doing, but you got to pay this jackass. And they've been fighting it. They're taking it to the Supreme Court. The New England area fishers or fishermen, because most of them are small independent contractors. They can't afford that. It's bad enough they already have. They're already all low-jacked. You remember low-jack? Because they have to keep a box on their boat that determines their position and tracks them for the federal government all day, every day. Excuse me. Tracks them all day, every day. And if there's a malfunction, they cannot pull out. They have to remain docked until it can be repaired. They have to buy that equipment and pay a rental fee on it. And it's very expensive. Now they got to have some idiot bureaucrat sitting on their boat watching them fish too. And they're taking it to the Supreme Court because it's overreach. And this is the same kind of crap. Severe government overreach causing problems for small contractors. And let me catch up some comments here. Urban Angst says Canadian fishing vessels have been plagued by paper observers for decades. Yeah, and they've been doing it out here for a long time too, especially in New England. And it's getting worse. And Semperfi says, yep, NOAA screwing over the guys and gals out there fishing. And most of them, I mean, you could go out. Think about that. You can go out and not have a haul today. Sometimes you got to dry fish. You don't come up with anything. You come home empty-handed. And you still have to pay this guy to sit on your boat? That's taking money out of the mouths of your family. Dragon says this will be assigned to an entity with strained resources with little power. They will do a few show enforcements and will be largely ineffective in changing labor patterns. And Gary Smith says an observer, huh? Just like a Soviet area political office, a Soviet area political officer. Yes. You know what that makes me think of too? If you ever read God's Smuggler, and it's a true story. It's a novel. More of a personal account of a somebody who used to smuggle Bibles into Eastern Bloc Europe, and he had to he was smuggling Bibles in and trying to provide them to churches to distribute secretly to their parishioners, and the priests were afraid to take them because they had an assigned observer overseeing them that read their and authorized their sermons and provided them with redacted Bibles with anything they can't talk about blacked out. It makes me think of that. But yeah, you saw that a lot in Soviet era, not just in the Soviet Union, but all across Eastern Bloc communist and socialist parts of Europe, where there were people assigned to look over your shoulder all the time. Helter says the agency will be punished for being ineffective by funding cut in a Republican administration in the future. And Urban says many of them aren't even from the government, but from some third-party organization type of outfit that is contracted by the government, middlemen to middle civil servants. And Gary Edwards says a starfish just keeps pulling on a clam inexorably until the bivalve muscle finally tires and opens up. Does our flag have 50 stars or 50 starfish? Very well put, Gary Edwards. And he says, Brother Andrew. Yes, thank you, Brother Andrew from God Smuggler. That's it, Brother Andrew. Oh, and there's Dusty. Dusty's in the chair behind me. But this is more, there she is, for those of you who can see. More government bureaucracy, more government overreach. I mean, we're at the almost at the point here with this kind of garbage as the citizen police in China. They're not really police. You know, the guys with the armband who rat on you officially and don't get paid for it. Hey, at least here you get a check. I don't think they get paid for it. I could be wrong. You know who I'm talking about? The citizen police force. And their job is basically just to snitch on people. They don't have any actual authority, but they can call in authorities and get you jammed up real quick. They're authorized to rat officially and screw people's lives up. We're getting to that point, that whole see something, say something culture, that whole concept, because they say no snitching. We have to fight this no snitching policy thing. No snitching would be a great thing if you did it for the right reasons. Like, I'm going to snitch on my neighbor if he kills somebody, but I'm not going to snitch on my neighbor because he forgot to cut his grass. But if somebody murdered someone next door, I bet you no one would say anything. But if they didn't pull their barrel in, they'll be calling code enforcement, because that's how petty people are. It's disgusting. I have a big problem with code enforcement. My wife used to work for the city of Atlanta, and she knows a lot about that, because, and the way she explains it is, people from code enforcement, they just sit in their car in a little spot that they picked out to park and play on their phone until they get a call from the main office to go and check something out. They're not out patrolling looking for infractions. If somebody called in on you because your hedges are too high, it's because a neighbor ratted on you, just for the satisfaction of screwing somebody over. It's pathetic, isn't it? That's the nature of man, unfortunately. And God forbid you give these people a damn check. Well, they'll really start ratting people up. People are natural snitches. It's unfortunate. And I've mentioned this before. When I worked for juvenile justice, I can't tell you how many clients I had that they would come into the office asking if they could talk to me. And the first thing they would say is, I'm not a snitch, but. And then 9 times out of 10, whatever they told me turned out to be bullshit. Urban says some people would snitch just for the possibility of future favors. Yeah. Little do they realize that when the revolution happens, the useful idiots are the first against the wall. Snitches get stitches. And Brian says they see your house being robbed, but don't call the cops. Yeah, I know. But again, your grass is too high and they're on the phone. They're on the phone. Think French Revolution. They got to as they were narrowing down after the French Revolution, the people that took over were just as corrupt as the aristocrats that they pushed out. They got corrupt very quickly, and they turned on everybody. And it got to the point where they were bringing people to the guillotine that were being charged with having even been employed by someone who was an aristocrat. Oh, you made socks for Lord so-and-so? Off with his head. You used to deliver milk to so-and-so's house? Off with his head. They were that, because what if there was a revolution, it'll boil over and they'll go after everybody. When they run out of people to torment, they'll start inventing shit. And if you're a snitch, you're going to get burned. Anyways, with that, I'll go ahead and start wrapping things up as we get close to the top of the hour. Of course, this is Coffee Talk. You've been listening to and or watching Coffee Talk on YouTube, and you can find me at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as at Prepper University on YouTube, or at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter. Thank you. Gary Edwards says Madame Lafarge, quoting a fictional character from Tale of Two Cities there. And then Gary Smith says power corrupts whether you're an aristocrat or not. That's right. That is right. And last but not least, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. and Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time, that is. Special thanks, of course, to Semper Fi for making a donation to the channel. Every bit appreciated. And of course, thanks to everybody else who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will catch you again tomorrow.